I have a TheCUS N5550 here. Today I'm going to talk about loading DiskStation Manager 7 on this TheCUS. TheCUS makes some really nice hardware, and this is a good example of one. This is a 5-bay NAS. It has 2 Ethernet ports. I've had no problems with the hardware on this NAS drive at all, but the software that TheCUS provides is, in my opinion, terrible. It's not stable. It can't even do RAID 5 rebuilds correctly. So a few years ago I put DiskStation Manager 6 on here using June's Loader, but June's Loader was abandoned a while ago now, and you can't load the latest versions of DiskStation Manager 6 on here or newer version 7. So recently a new program came out called RedPill. RedPill is still in the beta state, but it works very well with the most recent release, which I will document in the description for this video. I've been testing this now for about 4 days solid, and I've done some RAID rebuilds. I've intentionally crashed the RAID to see how a rebuild would work. It worked fine. I let it run for about 4 days straight. No errors, no reboots. It's stable. So today I'm going to start with how we take this apart and what we need. So the first thing you're going to need is a thumb drive, USB flash drive. So this is what I'm using. I like a low profile thumb drive. The main reason is this thumb drive has to stay in the hardware full time. This is not temporary. So you're going to be leaving this in the back of the unit. And I don't like longer thumb drives like this style here. It's a lot longer. It sticks out quite a bit. If you ever have to move your unit, maybe you vacuum it, you clean it up, it's very easy to possibly knock this and damage the USB port. But with one of these very short thumb drives, it barely sticks out of the USB port. This is very safe. There's no accidental way that you're going to knock this to the side and damage something. So I highly recommend getting a low profile USB stick like this. It does not have to be very large. The smallest I could find on Amazon was 16 gig, and we're going to use some Windows software to load this thumb drive up with the Rufus software. So I'll go through that also. But for right now, let's take this apart so I can show you what you have to do to get this ready to run DiskStation Manager software. First thing you want to do is there's 3 thumb screws in the back of this NAS drive. So you're just going to go around the back. There's a thumb screw in the top center, and there's 2 thumb screws in the bottom corners. So you're going to take them off, and actually they stay attached, but they come loose. I would then use the top thumb screw, hold it. You might want to open the lid and then just pull it forward about an inch, inch and a half, and then just pull it straight up. That's how you get the lid off. Now once you have the lid off, we want to turn this to the side. And there's a couple things we want to do. The first thing we have to do is disable the built-in boot code that TheCUS has on here. And that's this guy right here, that thing called the MDS. We need to disable that because that's where the TheCUS boot code is. So the simplest thing to do is take this connector, which is what powers this board, and just pull it out. Leave it in the case, and that'll disable that card from now booting, because we're going to be booting off of a, one of these USB flash drives. The next thing I highly recommend doing, since these units are fairly old, they have a watch battery on them. The watch battery is slightly up and to the left. It's right here. We have to make a BIOS change to this for it to boot. If this battery dies, it defaults to the default BIOS, which will not boot the RedPill code correctly. So go out and get a CR1220 watch battery. That's what this requires. I've already had to replace all of my watch batteries in my TheCUS because they failed several years ago. It doesn't matter if they fail when you're using the TheCUS software because the BIOS defaults to the right settings. But with the setting change we're going to make to get RedPill loaded, the battery has to work. Also, be careful when you pry this battery out that you pry it out properly. I managed to break one of the battery connectors once when I was prying this out. So be very careful how you do this, or you can pull the battery holder off the foils of the circuit board. Okay, the next step is changing the BIOS on your TheCUS. You're going to need a keyboard and you're going to need a monitor. The monitor needs to be VGA or HDMI. The TheCUS supports either. When you have the lid off, it may not be obvious, but this is the power button right here, this top little green button. All right, that's your power on, that's your reset. Okay, the next step is to change the BIOS setting. So once you turn the unit on by pressing the green button, you want to start pressing the F2 key on your keyboard. I also recommend that you do not have the USB boot stick in the TheCUS yet, because otherwise it might boot off of it if you don't get the keyboard right. So turn the unit on and start pressing F2. Okay, once you have this screen up, I will zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. You want to go down to boot features, and then you want to, using the down arrow key, all the way down to UEFI boot. Now in this case, I've already changed the setting because this is a working TheCUS with the DSM-7 on it. But when you do this, it's going to be enabled by default. So you want to press enter and pick disabled. Once you do that, then you press the F10 key. I'm going to pan out. The instructions are on the bottom of the screen. You can see it there. It says press F10, and then you press yes for enter, for saving it. And at that point, you've now made the change. I'm going to turn it off. We need to download the RedPill software. This is the link, github.com, and I will provide that link in the video description below. Once you navigate to this page, the current version is 0.4.5, which is what I've been using. You do want the IMG file. Do not download the VMDK. The VMDK is for virtual machines. The IMG is for physical machines. So you click this link and pick the download button over here and download your file. Once you've downloaded the gzip file, you have to extract the image file from it. I like to use Total Commander, but you can use any utility that you're comfortable with unzipping a gzip file. So I have it in my downloads directory. I'm going to double click the gzip file. There's the image file that we need, and I'm going to just drag this to a different folder on my SSD. And now we have the image file, which is the file that's going to be written to the flash drive. Once you have the file extracted, the next step is to run a program that can copy the image to a USB flash drive. I like to use Rufus. So with Rufus, just launch the application. Make sure it's pointing to your USB flash drive, that it's not pointing to some other critical drive in your computer. You hit the select button here, navigate to where you extracted the tinycore redpill.img file, select it. You don't have to change any of these defaults, they're all fine, and just hit the start button. It's going to give you a warning that it's going to format these drive letters. You don't have to worry if you have something on the flash drive. Rufus will overwrite it. Okay, now that it's ready, we can hit the close button and we can eject the drive from our computer and put it back onto the TheCUS system. Next step you have to do a Google search on. I can't put the link in the YouTube video. Just Google search for DS3615XS space download. That will bring you to this page, and just select this button here and download the image. And make note of where you downloaded the file to. Okay, so I'm going to turn the TheCUS back on with the USB boot stick installed. That's the bootloader, the grub. Alright, so right now it's booting a very small Linux distro. The following steps coming up will require a mouse for the GUI interface. If you don't have a mouse, just press alternate Control F1 at the same time. That will bring up the character-based version of terminal so you can enter the RedPill commands. And once you get to the GUI, using the mouse, you want to move over to this terminal program in the bottom right of the screen. Click it, and it brings up a text box where we're going to type in some shell commands. These are the commands we're going to be typing in. I will put them in the description of the video, but these are the commands. So you can hit the pause key if you like here and write them down, or it will be in the description below. Okay, once we're running the terminal program, we need to type in some shell scripts. We're going to start with /rploader.sh space serialgen space DS3615XS. This is case sensitive, so be careful. So this will generate a serial number and a MAC address for our USB stick. Press enter and then answer yes. You can use the up arrow key so you don't have to type in the whole command again. So I'm going to up arrow, I'm going to backspace. Now we're going to type in identify USB space now. Press enter. This is going to identify the vid and the PID for the USB stick. Say yes. Up arrow. Now we're going to do the satamap. Say yes. Now we have to do a backup. This is not backing up your data on your hard drives. This is just a backup of some config files. Say yes. Okay, the last command is going to probably have to run at least twice. It's going to go out to the internet and see if it has the latest version. I'm going to clear the screen. And we're going to do build BROMOLOW dash 7.0.1 dash 42218. Press enter. So now it's asking that there's a newer version of the script, so we're going to say yes, go get it. And it got the file. So now we have to rerun, so just do the up arrow key and press enter. Now it's building the drivers for this particular piece of hardware. It's going out, grabbing the proper NIC and everything else it needs, the SATA controller. And it's going to automatically rewrite the USB stick for a bootloader. It's very nice, it's very simple, it's a lot easier to build than June's loader. Okay, it's complete. We now have a bootable USB stick. You want to exit out of the terminal program and shut down the TinyCore Linux distro. I read a couple of comments where if you don't shut down the Linux distro correctly, it won't flush the cache and possibly not write all of the data to the USB stick correctly. So make sure you shut down the box correctly. All right, so we'll power on the TheCUS with the USB flash drive set up for RedPill. What it does is it actually rewrites the USB stick after you run those shell commands. So we'll let the BIOS boot up. You should get the grep screen like that. Let it default to USB. And that's it. That's the best you're going to see from this screen. Nothing else is going to come out of this screen if it's working. Now we need to go to Windows and launch a utility to find our TheCUS. Once you've turned on your TheCUS with the RedPill bootloader, I would wait about 2 minutes. I've never timed it, but I feel it's probably about 2 minutes. It's a good safe bet. Then go back to your PC and do find.synology.com. Press enter. This is going to search for Synology NAS units. If you have multiple Synology units on your network, be careful that you pick the correct one. You'll see arrows here, meaning there's more than one Synology on your network. So in this case, it's picking the one that says not installed, which is exactly what we want. It's a 3615XS like we developed, and it's a DSM7. So we're going to go connect. We're going to pick install. We're going to browse. This is going to be the file that you downloaded from Synology. So this is the file that we downloaded, DSM, with the .pat on the end of it. That's the file you want to open. Say next. Okay, this next step is critical and something to be very careful about. If you have an existing TheCUS NAS system, those hard drives are going to get wiped. There's no way to import the data on those TheCUS drives. You're going to have a full backup, and then you're going to have to copy those files back to the Synology. There's no way to import that data. So if you continue forward here, you're going to lose the data, so make sure it's backed up. If you have an existing disk station manager system like DSM6, it will import/migrate those drives. I've tried it. It did work with Disk Station Manager 7 and RedPill. But it's beta software. Be careful. I would recommend using a scratch disk just to make sure this works fine before you actually import your real data. So I'm going to say continue. This takes a little while. I've never timed it, but I'll let it sit here and you can watch it do the full install. Okay, at this point you have to wait for this to count down. Do not press the refresh button or try to log in before the countdown is done. I did this once and I was able to log in and it didn't go well. Wait for it to refresh the page and do the next set of prompts. It's going to take about 3 to 4 minutes. Okay, so now we start. We're going to give it a name. I'll call it DSM7 test NAS. Give it an account name. And a password. I would prefer right now for notify me. I don't want to do automatic updates. You're best to check on the forums to see how the updates react with this loader. And here we go, DSM7. First thing I like to do is go over here and right-click the storage manager and put that on the desktop. I don't know why that's not there. I think it should be there. But this way you've got the storage manager here. If we run it, it'll ask you your prompts for whatever RAID you're going to do. I'm not going to do all these steps because at this point this is just standard Synology DiskStation Manager. The only thing I'd like to point out is the drives for the TheCUS start at drives 2 to 6. Drive 1 is not there. I think that's because of the internal SATA port on the motherboard. So just so you know, it's drives 2 through 6 for the hard drives you'll be using. So just a reminder, keep in mind this is beta software. I did test this for 4 days straight. I was copying data. I did a rebuild. I did a migrate. Everything worked well, but it is beta, so be careful if you've got real data here.